successful simulation that they did. It wasn't on the county road, but with the 90 by the Blue Water Tower interchange and being able to expand a couple lanes there. So that's all run through the GVNRTC.
I will say this with regards to subdivisions. Our Department of Environment and Planning does have a review of various new subdivisions and new developments. They actually can review them for impact on the environment. So we could actually reject something if it appears there's not enough water to go to a new subdivision, or if they don't have sewer capacity and they're not building enough septic and stuff like that. But we can't reject it for it's going to have a negative impact on our roads. We can only reject it if it has an impact on water and air, and the cleaning of water that comes in the house, if you know what I mean, because we have the sewer districts for much of the county, and water supply going out. So if a developer does not have an adequate plan, we could reject it for that. But if they say we're going to put a new 200 housing unit in Marilla, and it's going to have a negative impact on a particular road heading to Marilla, we can't reject it because of that reason.
The other reason I asked it,
We can cause death due to a negative impact on traffic. And we did just recently cause death to subdivisions that were proposed off of William Street because of
And that was through your planning board, right?
Well, no, the town board ultimately has to do that. And the town board did just recently.
Oh, okay, we don't, ours is different. Yeah, because the way the law works, we're not going to the full negative declaration or positive declaration under seeker. We just have to review it in that limited area.
the only reason I asked it, I was on the town board with Pleasant Meadow subdivision, which was 1,200 single-family homes. And since then, there have been patio homes and apartments put in.
Right.
And we got a response back from the county and the state. There was no significant impact on traffic now. We got 3,000 cars coming, there's got to be significant impact on traffic something. That was my question on that.
Yeah, no, the only modeling that is done with us is through when we ask GVNRTC to do it. New York State DOT may have a separate, but it's not done through us.
One more comment though, the Cornell School roads, they determined right now that the average time for a road to be repaved is 8 to 10 years, not
Right.
10 to 15. So
Yeah, the 10 to 15 was back when there were other materials used and when
exactly, materials are the
healthy.
same, traffic's
Yeah.
the same. One more comment, I think you made a good move, John Deneen, your assistant, great guy. I worked with him when he was in Clarence, does a great job. He's very approachable, he works with you very well. I want to compliment you on that. Thanks.
Thank you.
I am Nicholas Orticelli. I got some comments and questions. I'm glad you're alone. I think half an hour, so I'll take a half an hour too. For one, I would like to know how much your armed guns cost the taxpayers since the point that it started until now, and whether these guys are getting, if the taxpayers are paying for this for you to campaign around Western New York throughout the parades. Here, I think you're campaigning right now, you're trying to sell your message to be reelected. So I think as the taxpayers, we should know how much these guys, and no discredit to these guys, they're doing their job, they're following orders, but I want to know as a taxpayer how much they're costing the taxpayers of Barrett County. I find it very interesting how you guys can sit here and talk about these pet projects. For instance, on Grand Island, a welcome center that nobody uses. I don't know if that's taxpayer money in Erie County.
It's a state.
Okay, so I mean, there are different routes that we can get money, and essentially it still comes from Western New York, and then it comes back to us. I just don't know how we can talk about pet projects like Solar City that cost almost $1 billion, roads to that the taxpayers are paying for no traffic literally to go to Solar City. I don't understand how you guys could look at this and tell us about these new roads in this business park when all these roads, and I mean the lady wants a new road on William Street. Okay, so you guys are going to take another 3 years to do a study just to find out that okay, you can't open the place up. You already know that, so why are you discussing that first of all? Okay, just pave the road. The other thing is I want to know from Mark why he was so pro undocumented immigrant. I call them illegal immigrants because that's what they're here illegally. I want to know why he was so pro Cuomo on that, but now I want to know if he actually supports Mickey Kern's lawsuit against the state, allowing these people to get their New York State driver's license. And does Mark believe that these guys aren't going to register to vote because there's no checks and balances to ensure that that's not going to happen? So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay, first off, just first thing you talked about, I don't have any idea how much these gentlemen get paid, but the work that they're doing is based on their regular hours. And the security details provided due to an incident that occurred. I don't have security 24 hours out of the day. There are times in which we do not have security, but when we're in public locations where we have advertised it, we have asked for security, and the sheriff's office says we should have security. Central Police Services says I should have security. The Buffalo PD said I should have security based on the incident that occurred, which occurred at my house.
But just
But you said that's, just you asked the question, I'm
Okay.
answering. Actually asked a lot of questions, but I'll try to get to each one. I don't know how much their salaries are, never asked, but they are professionals. These are gentlemen who work very hard on behalf of the people of Erie County from the sheriff's office. They are assigned by the sheriff's office,
I don't disagree.
and they've done a great job. You asked about the issue associated with Solar City, Tesla. That is a state issue. We've had no involvement from the county involved in that with regards to dollars going into it, nor any dollars in the roads. I don't believe that there was any new roads built for Solar City, though they did repave South Park Avenue in front due to all the truck damage when they were building it because of all the trucks that were going to the site. So they repaved South Park Avenue, but that was not done by the county, that would have been done by the state.
But that is still county money though.
No.
No, it is.
No,
I mean,
there's no
where
county-
does the state get money?
There's no county money from our budget.
Well,
In all likelihood, it's probably being paid for by downstate because we get more money back as a community than that's put in by our tax revenue.
It might be because
The
Buffalo don't
state
pay school
generates taxes primarily by the income tax. And if you look at the amount of money that's brought back into our community versus what's paid out in income tax, we actually get more back. That's generally how it goes. But there was no county dollars associated with that project at all. Donor Street is literally 1/3 of a mile, and it was to open up what was for decades an unused area, to create an office park.
Yeah, we're talking about used area compared to unused area that nothing exists there.
But Welded 2 moved in there, and they have 100 jobs, and they're now creating taxes for the county, the city of Lackawanna, and the Lackawanna School District, where there was nothing. TMP Products, I don't know if you saw the story about it. Does anybody here know or hear or use the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser? Yeah, a lot of people going, yeah. It's a Procter & Gamble product. But Procter & Gamble doesn't make it. It's made by TMP Technologies based in Buffalo. Procter & Gamble wants them to move to Ohio. They don't want to move to Ohio. They have about a workforce of 60 and 65 individuals. But their facility is currently inadequate and they can't expand. So they're buying land that the county acquired to build a brand new facility where they'll actually be able to add jobs, about 100 jobs, and because of the brownfield tax credits that exist, they'll be paying full taxes on a majority of the site. They're seeking a tax break on a portion of it. I think it's a good thing to keep the 60 jobs and add another 40 jobs by creating a business park where one didn't exist. And talking about sprawl, this is where we want businesses to go, like that, manufacturing. They're clean manufacturing, not a smokestack, but we want them to go where they've always been, which is like Lackawanna or Buffalo, where they have the land, because truthfully, I think, and I know there's a lot of right-to-farm towns in our community, they don't want the businesses to go out there. We want them where the infrastructure exists. So we've done this project. We purchased the land from the former owner of the land, which was the last in line to the steel companies that used to be there. It generated almost no taxes for decades, and now it's starting to generate taxes because businesses are starting to move there. So I think that 1/3 of a mile is a good investment because in the long run, it will generate revenue for the community.
Well, the problem is you have a lot of those different projects across the board.
Well, you do, because
And
you
a
have.
convention center too, I mean, we don't,
Yeah,
we just, you're
you
talking
cannot,
about.
I will say, you are right. We're trying to create an agricultural industrial park in the town of Evans and Gola. We are trying to figure out what we're gonna do with the old Erie County home, out in Alden, right on Walden. Because it has value, but it also has an old building with a ton of asbestos in it that nobody will touch. We tried to sell it, and we have it open for sale, and the legislator knows this. Our problem is, we haven't been anybody's interested in it because it's full of asbestos. So we're probably gonna have to demolish it, but we don't wanna demolish it until we know what we're gonna do with the land, or have somebody who's going to come in and put tax revenue into it in a parcel of land that has generated 0 taxes since the Erie County home was put there, because it's owned by Erie County. So you have to have these projects. We do economic development projects in Tonawanda, we do them in Buffalo. We've worked with the town of Lancaster on a number of economic development projects. We don't always agree on some of the projects that we have.
Sometimes not.
Sometimes we don't.
So was that place closed because of Cuomo's war on mental health facilities?
Why?
The Erie County,
No, it was closed because it became a very bad facility and a brand new one was open at ECMC. Terrace View was a wonderful facility at ECMC, replacing what was basically an 80-year-old facility out in Alden, which it was horrible condition. It needed more work to be done on that facility than it actually cost to build a brand new one on the ECMC campus downtown in Buffalo. And now there's a wonderful modern facility. That had nothing to do with any decision made with regards to mental health, because it is a nursing facility for individuals who are aged or have injuries and they need to go into a nursing facility. I think that's.
okay, so do you support Mickey Kern's lawsuit against the state?
There would be no lawsuit unless I authorize the county attorney to file a suit.
So you
The clerk
actually,
cannot, the only people who can authorize a suit are the legislature or the county executive. And I don't think the clerk expected me to authorize a suit, but I said it was a legitimate suit because we need to determine the constitutionality of the law. And there are legitimate issues, and it has to be decided in a federal court, not a state court, because what we're talking about is the legitimacy of federal law versus state law. So I authorized the suit. I told the county attorney to file it. Let's do it in-house, rather than hire outside counsel, which would cost us probably hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. So I authorized the suit. I have said if the judge determines that the law is constitutional, we have as a responsibility as sworn elected officials to enforce the law. I may not like it. There's a lot of laws that I don't necessarily like that I have to enforce, but they're the law. I'm a lawyer. I don't know if I have any. Actually, I do. I used to carry it as a lawyer, and I still carry it in a bunch of my suits. It's the Constitution. It reminds me of the law. And one of the things that it talks about are the differences between states' rights, federal government, and I don't always like the laws that we have on the books, but we try to do correct laws that meet the needs of this community. But there's some old laws on the books that we look at today and we go, man, what are those doing on the books still? But as an elected official, I place my hand on the Bible and swear an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the state of New York, and Erie County Charter. So we're determining constitutionality of it. If the court of law determines it's constitutional, Mr. Kearns has an issue, because now he has to determine, am I going to enforce a law a judge determined is constitutional or not? And if he doesn't, he now has violated his oath. So you don't have to like the law, but you got to make a determination. And I talked to Mickey about it, and his response is, we'll cross that bridge when it comes.
well, I don't understand it. So you say you're constitutional, but then you say you gotta abide by the law. So which is it? Do you
If the
abide
judge
by the
determines,
Constitution or
we live in a society of laws. And the way we have a society is we have an executive branch in most, we have a judicial, we have a legislative. And that's what the federal government set up, that's what state government, and in some ways that's what local government is.
Okay, so let's just make it easy. Do you support Cuomo, or do you support the people that don't think that these people should be allowed to vote when they register and get their?
Well, I've said all along that an individual who's not a citizen should not have the right to vote.
Okay, so do they,
So it's just,
do you think
you
they
know,
should have their
only
driver's
citizens-
license?
Only citizens should have the right to vote.
Should they
And
have their driver's
I've come
license?
out against the law, saying I believe that there's problems with the law. The issue is, the law has been passed, Nick. I don't have a decision on the law being passed. Now it's a decision on the constitutionality of it.
Okay, but you're
And
an
that's-
elected representative, so I'm asking you, do you think that they should be allowed to have driver's licenses? That's my
It was not
question.
my preference, but I didn't have anything to do with it.
No, yeah, I just want you to give us.
I said that, I said it wasn't my preference, but I didn't have anything to do with it. So I'm sitting here like, a lot of people were like, I can't believe you passed that law, Mark Poloncarz, and I'm like, no, I just signed the fair housing law, but I didn't do anything with regards to the green light bill, that was state government. And it needs to be resolved at the federal level. There are, I mean, I feel for the dreamers, the individuals who came here as children with their parents. They've been 2 or 3 years old. The only life they know is the United States. They may have a background that was Mexican or Dominican. The only language they speak is English. We have to find a way to give them a path to citizenship.
And why are you doing that first then? And then saying, once you do
That's
that-
why I said this has to be resolved at the federal level.
Okay, so my last question, and I'm gonna just go sit down. 'Cause I mean, I could sit here for days with you on a lot of different issues.
We
But-
can see that.
That's the great thing about our government. We can debate the issues, but we don't have to agree, but we can do it civilly.
I agree. So now, how are these roads being constructed? Are we sending this open to open bid? Or are we just saying, well, only this, block of labor is allowed to do, build these roads?
Well, there's only a certain amount of work that our staff can do. Commissioner Geary did talk about how we're doing more this year, and we use contractors on larger projects.
That's what I'm saying. Well, so if you got
And we
to,
bid them out, we're required to issue what's called a request for proposal, in which we just don't pick a contractor and say, oh, okay, you're gonna get the project, they bid on it.
so is
And
the
then
project,
the lowest responsible bidder is chosen.
so is that open to all contractors, or is that a
Yes.
project labor agreement where only union?
No, it's open all.
Okay, that's, okay.
They have
Sorry.
they have to follow county bidding standards and county law, but there are no project labor agreements on our contracts for roads. And pretty much, the only thing that we've got a project labor agreement on is usually construction of buildings. And even then, the most recent one that had a PLA on it was the STEM building, which came in under budget on time. Actually, it came in about $1 million less for the county's cost under the budget. So, I mean, sometimes a lot of people disagree, like, oh, you're using a union contractor, but union contractors often have the best trained employees, and they can get a job done quicker and faster and safer, and often at less cost than sometimes even the non-unions can. Thanks.
John Kusmarski would like to talk about William and blowing the road from William to East Aurora. We're approaching end of August.
Yes,
We
sir.
still have potholes left over from the previous winter. How often are we going to keep avoiding the potholes? Why aren't they filled?
I can get on that, and I'm not aware of the potholes that aren't full, but Bowen Road is on the schedule. That's
Bowen
this month.
up to Lancaster Town line,
No, to Clinton Street, sir.
okay? But from Clinton all the way to East Aurora, we have holes. And they're left over from the previous winter.
I'll get out, I'll have my district get a look at that tomorrow. I was unaware of that.
At any time, you can call the Department of Public Works numbers, which I think there's the helpful phone number list up front. You can grab one of those. Or if you want to use email, we have the special pothole hotline, which is potholes@erie.gov. You can drop an email and it goes right to our Department of Public Works. They share it with the district engineers depending on what the road is. And we get a lot of requests in that, and often many of those requests aren't for county roads. And if they're not, we will forward them on to the appropriate municipality.
Thank you.
John Beatty, retired iron worker, Local 6. Thanks for the work, Mr. Poloncarz.
Guys do good work.
Mr. Brusco's office and Lynn Rybeck were very responsive to my also last year. We were on talking terms of trying to get something done about Schwartz Road, the south side of Broadway on Schwartz Road. It runs across William.
Yes, sir.
Schwartz Road.
Yep.
Now,
Just-
thanks for the work you just got done doing on it.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
But the problem still exists in front of my house.
The dip?
Yes. The dip is still dipping.
Well, you got the right guy here.
You know, and I was so happy to see them out there doing that work. But there's something in the base of that road that's missing. And you notice more nowadays, and William Street was mentioned about all the construction, all the concrete trucks, the heavy stone trucks,
Right.
and it's 24/7. They're coming down there all the time. And when they hit that dip, my house shakes. You know, stuff's coming off the walls, the foundation is cracking, and,
We'll have our, I'll make certain that the commissioner looks into it and they figure out.
396 Schwartz Road, and my neighbor, 395 across the
I know
street.
exactly, yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, we went, we
Had those
took it,
conversations.
and they had sled paved that, they built up that area. At first, we thought there was a culvert under there that we weren't aware of that had collapsed. It happens a lot of times. Some of our inventory isn't always from the inception of that road being our road. Some of these roads were state roads, and the maps, they're non-existent of what's underneath the road.
Yeah.
The crews went out there, they assured us that there wasn't a collapsed culvert. It was more settling, so they were gonna sled pave it, which they did before they did the pavement preservation technique there, of oil and chipping. And sorry to hear that that's still a problem, so we'll get that looked at tomorrow as well.
Oh, I appreciate that. And another thing, the heavy truck traffic.
Yes, sir.
The speed limit on Schwartz, I think, was 45 miles an hour. Well, you know they're going 65. I'm requesting a reduction in the speed limit there.
And that's something that can happen. That's a process through the town. The town board passes the resolution. Like I said, they're a Class A community. They're in charge of the speed limits.
Yeah, we don't have any control.
We don't have control over speed limits.
And I don't even know if it's specified as a major truck route, whether it is or it isn't, but it is.
Exactly. And that's almost like a cut through. It has become a popular road to use for the truck traffic, specifically with Broadway and going in. The big quarry is out just on the county line from Genesee and Erie County. A lot of those trucks, they're hauling stone to some of the construction projects for the homes, our roads.
So a reduction in speed would be somewhat of a solution.
Okay. Unfortunately, I don't do the law
That's
enforcement.
That's
Town,
all.
town board recommends the police department, it goes to the police and they do a study on it. And they'll determine whether or not.
I mean, I don't want to get down on the police, but I can't remember when somebody was pulled over for speeding on that road. I mean, in the last 10 years.
There's your money.
That's enough out of me.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nancy, and I represent the Constitutional Coalition of New York State. And I have a couple questions that the people in our group wanted me to ask you, Mark, and you, John. So I'm going to read it to make sure I get it right. Mark, the county comptroller asked you to shut down playground equipment because of dangerous levels of lead paint a few weeks ago, and you refused. But your Parks Commissioner and Health Commissioner has now done exactly what the comptroller said you should have done weeks ago. They shut down the equipment. Why did you wait?
That's not what the controller asked me for. He asked me to shut down all playgrounds in Erie County. And I said we would send out our Department of Health through the Department of Parks to test with the actual guns that test lead to determine the exact lead level, all of the older equipment. And we would immediately shut down the older equipment that had levels of lead on it, which is what we did. The controller specifically asked me to shut down all playgrounds in Erie County. How many of your parents are work parents? Do you think, would you want your kid to have every playground in Erie County shut down? So I responded and said, no, I'm not going to shut down every playground in Erie County. Those were his exact words. Lead lead poisoning is a very bad thing, I will agree, and that's why we fought it. My administration has put more money to address lead poisoning, even though some of the legislators, including one who used to represent this district, voted against it. We went to the legislature today and gave our presentation to the legislature on the equipment that we identified that had lead or did not have lead on it. Most of it is being taken out. Some of it can be remediated through encapsulation. The interesting thing is the most popular items that we have in our parks, not often with the kids, but with the parents, are the older ones. Because lead paint was banned as of 1978. I guarantee you, if you have a house that you live right now in a house that was made before 1978, you have lead paint on the walls, and you have a greater risk of exposure if you have children from them being in your house than them sliding down a slide. Because it's ingestion of lead. That is how it happens. It's not from sliding on a slide or touching a teeter-totter. It's from ingesting lead. You ingest lead two ways. You eat it, or and this is the primary reason in which most children become poisoned is with lead, is you breathe it in. If you have an old windowsill, old windows, and you lift them up, what happens when you lift up old windows with paint on the wall? Dust. That's how most ingestion of children come in. What we did do is we tested the playground equipment that's safe, put back into service. Equipment that wasn't safe has caution tape, because our folks, because of the lead safe standards, have to be trained in how to take the equipment out. So they are now being trained. And all the dangerous equipment, when I say dangerous, I mean it has lead on it. It's not, I wouldn't say it's dangerous, but there's a greater risk of the children injuring themselves from falling off the slide and breaking their arm than there is probably ingesting lead, but to be safe, we're taking that equipment out. If it's equipment that is safe and is just older, but it has no lead on it, probably because the lead was taken off, or it's completely painted over and encapsulated, we're making certain that stays that way too.
With all due respect, you can absorb lead through just touching it on your skin. It's not
I'm listening to the advice from Dr. Gail Burstein, our health commissioner, who is a world-renowned pediatrician. She's a pediatrician. And she, like I, when we heard about this, the first thing we said is, let's get our sanitarians from the Department of Health to go out and start testing it with the actual guns that give accurate readings. And I do know there was a number of parts, there were items that I believe the control identified that when we went out there with the actual readings did not have lead in it. Don't know why his tests, but those tests aren't 100% accurate, the ones you buy in the store. If anybody has, I'm offering this because it's a service we do offer, if anybody has a house that's pre-1978 and you're worried because you might have your grandchildren or children there, and it generally is for those that are 5 and under, it's not if they're 8 or older, but it's 5 or under, we can come out there and test your house. We can come out with a gun and test it, and it reads the lead level on the walls and the windowsills. And the only thing is, if you do that, you have a responsibility then to remediate it. And if you tried to sell your house and you knew that there was lead in the walls and you didn't, you could actually be sued for some big money if you tried to sell a house and they found out that there was a lead test on the house. So sometimes people don't want to know the answer because they're like, hey, I don't have any kids, I don't have any kids running here, I don't want anybody to know whether, I don't care if I have lead on the walls, it's not affecting me personally, I don't want to know. But if you do it, you then have a responsibility, and we teach individuals how to properly remediate and encapsulate the lead paint on the walls.
Okay, John, this is a question from some members of our group who live in Lancaster. People are people, and we believe every member of our community has rights. With the right legislation, should driver's licenses be given to illegal immigrants?
The first thing I would like to answer is about the lead, because I am the chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee. Today, the new commissioner of parks came in, along with Gail Burstein, along with the controller, and we asked those questions. And we spent what was allotted was 1 hour to 2 hours and 15 minutes digging into it and working as an entire legislature. And that commissioner who just, was it Monday? Did anyone tell me, was it Monday that he started?
Last week.
Last week.
He was
Okay.
the former commissioner, he
And
left for 4 years.
Honolulu has brought attention to this because it took this long. So now today you're taking
Okay.
this.
I want to add one thing, just about stuff now. We heard from the reporter he had that information for 3 weeks and he didn't share it. All I asked is him to provide that information to us. We would have immediately sent out, like we did the day we found out about it, the sanitarians. If he really cared about it, he wouldn't have held it for 3 weeks.
It's your job, not his job.
It's the Parks Department and the Health
Nice
Department.
thing.
That are underneath you.
And I believed, based on the information, that it was safe. I just wish that he had immediately contacted us instead of holding it, because he gave a tour to the reporter before he released the information to the county. he should have at least released the information to the county, because he's out there saying, I can't believe all this stuff hasn't been fixed yet. Well, he sat on it for 3 weeks and then gave a reporter the information before he actually gave it to the county so we could fix it.
With all due
That's
respect, that's
important.
not his job, that's your job, and how long have you had that job, and you gotta check that. So stop trying to cook the blame on somebody who brought lights, or maybe it is for his
And-
campaign, but at least he found out,
I
more
would-
than you did.
I would say this. I know what the job of the county controller is, and he does not do the job of the county controller, but he is an independently elected official.